Hello folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily TA wrap, where we take a look at these markets and we do it from a neoclassical perspective, asking ourselves each time, what happened today and what does it tell us about the coming one? I do the show 4 times a week, Monday to Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here from the base of the Rocky Mountains. Folks, I'm kind of struggling getting back into gear here. It seems like the quotes themselves come later and later. They're not up again, and I'm talking about index quotes. So I popped over to stock charts, so we'll just use those tonight because I really want to see what the volumes look like coming back into the new year here. So we'll use those to get a proxy. We'll look at the ETFs, which I normally don't look at, just to see what they look like as well. We had a down day. I mean, I've been talking about the idea that these markets were going to, pull back into the new year. And if we take a look at the ending numbers here, we can kind of see that that's exactly what they're doing. And so if I pull this in, zero in a little bit here, let me grab this other one. There we go. We had the Dow down, 135 today, 16,441. The S&P's dropped 16 1/3, 1831.98, so 1832. We had 33.5 knocked off the composite, 41.43. The index dropped 28.5 at 35.63.5. The Russell, the biggest loser, 12.9, almost 13 lower, 11.50 3/4. Gold up about 20 bucks today. Looks like it's up a little bit more after hours. Silver was up big. Oil got slammed down about $3 today. It really got hit. The dollar jammed higher. The euro took a beating. And we'll talk a little bit about why all that kind of stuff took place here as we get going. So let's think about where we are. And first of all, let's just look at the indexes together, and then we'll look at the ETFs as well and see if they look any different. So I was pulling this up to look at the SPX. I'm on stock charts tonight, given that I don't have quotes on my own system yet. And let me see, the numbers here, 1.8, and the big bar it's trying to get back into is 3.3, and that's high was 1823. We're coming back with 1.8. So no volume comparatively. That top is 23, we got to 27. So looks to me like what you're going to see here, let's use something else to draw. Looks like what you're going to see is we're going to see it try to get into this tomorrow. I suspect that top is what it's going to try to do. I'm pretty sure we got the employment numbers tomorrow. Let's double check that together. Calendars, economics. And tomorrow, we got all kinds of Fed speakers tomorrow, for one thing. No, we don't. We don't. So I was wrong. I thought we had the employment number, so that will be next week. So all you got tomorrow is a lineup of Fed speakers all over the place. And so I have no idea what these people are going to say. Looks like 2 of them were kind of easy money people, and a couple. 3 of them are easy, 2 aren't. So we'll get both sides of the story again tomorrow. But anyway, that SPX looks like it's going to come back into that area. Let's see what the Dow did. And volumes, same sort of thing here. So Dow itself looks like it's going to try to come back into this area, this bar. Now all these bars, if you remember, the Fed bar was here. 2 bars later is when you got the volume. That was a breakout bar. and the volume poured in, right? And then you got the stretch higher into the end of the year. And that was the last day of volume. That was quadruple witching, if I remember right, on the 20th. I believe that was a Friday. Yeah, it was. And so you had huge volume come in on quad witching, and then you just drifted for 6 more days higher. So you're coming back in. You're going to try to get back into that bar. Now, if you think about it on a broader perspective, right? The retest regen zone's down here, right? This is a swing point high in this area. So the retest regen is back into this area. These eventually want to get there, but it looks like to get there, you got to get through this, right? And the one we're going to look at next is kind of the key one, which is the NDX. So if you look at the NDX on this one, the NDX is got a gap, right? The bottom of that gap's 3552.30. We're at 3553.80, 65 to 9 was the low. You close a little bit higher than that, 5635. So what's the key here? Well, to get to the big retest regen zone, which is what these things want to do, right? You got to get through, and that's the zone. You got to get back through this gap, right? And that gap has this big bar supporting it right here at the top. And so you can see as this comes back into that, it's going to be hard to get underneath it. Now, given, I thought we had employment numbers tomorrow, but we don't. So given that the situation is set up this way, it looks to me like you're going to poke in there and you're going to try to break it down. And if it can't, these things are going to flip around and head back the other way. Now, they may be setting up a little small ABCD structure to get it down into that target area. And if you watch me long enough, you understand what I'm thinking there. And I suspect, boy, I gotta get your screen up here because I'm not paying attention. Here we go. Yeah, sorry. I'm gonna put these bars up so I can see what I got here, guys. Let's start over because I'm used to my own charts. So let's do it this way. All right. So now we got it up there. Okay, now let's try again. I'm going to go through it one more time because I kind of messed up on the screens. Okay, so you got a gap area here, right? That's the bottom of it. The big bar is here. And the top of that, if we look at the numbers on it, the top on that is 35.41 basically. You got as low as 35.53. So it looks to me like it's going to try to get into the top of that quad witching bar, which would give you, a little stretch to the downside. So in other words, we'd have a stretch down into here. And that, if it doesn't break down, which I think is going to be hard to do because there's really nothing to drive it tomorrow other than these Fed speakers, and they're probably going to be mixed, then you'll get some sort of a bounce out of there that potentially sets up the ABCD structure that gets you back down into this bar, which is your high, which is actually your retest regen bar, right? So you can kind of see how that could lay out to get you down there. Now, of course, the opposite potential is this thing just comes down and goes back up. And, that's possible because we certainly don't have the volume here that we had there. But I just believe from what I saw today and the way this thing just hung and stretched higher into the end of the year that you're going to come back and you're going to retest and regen off that bar. And I wouldn't be surprised to see it to get to the bottom. The real strength in all these charts are the same place. The real strength is right here, right in this area here, right? The bottom of this bar, the top of this one. That's where the real zone, that's going to be tough to get over because you got wide price spread on the Fed day and you got big volume on the quad day. So if you look at any of these charts, they all look the same from that perspective. And that perspective is where I'm leaning in terms of where these things want to go. So if I bring the SPX back and pull it up, you see the exact same sort of a situation, right? quadruple witching here, big Fed bar, wide price spread day on the way back up. That's the target area. That's the retest regen zone. That's the target area. That's where everything is. So somehow or another, this is going to try to work its way back down into that area. Whether it does it on a little ABCD down or whether it just goes straight down there, you know, maybe we get some bad news out of Fed guys tomorrow and we just jam on down there. But that's where it's trying to go. All right, so enough of this chart. Let's go back to my charts because I'm tired of using that. Thanks for reminding me, Dan. I just wasn't paying attention because I don't usually look I don't usually look at stock charts anymore like we used to. It's much easier to go to ours, but we're not getting the quotes on time. All right, now let's zero in on these. And what I was just telling you, you can see on the Dow. You see this green area? That green area, this I've got the DIA up on the ETF. That is the area that it's going to try to come back to. You can see it here on the Fed day. So your Fed day is here, right? This is your Fed day, and this is the quad day. And it's trying to get back into that support zone, which happens to be your retest regen zone. And one way or another, I suspect it's going to make its way back there. So volume did expand on the DIA. Let's flip through these real quick. So IWM, little expansion, nothing big. Now the IWM is the weakest of the group. Remember, it was the last one to break out. Got its breakout. It's already back in doing the retest regen. So this is actually interesting because, and let me go. I'll just go. I don't have, well, the Russell. I just won't have the volumes. Let's look here at the Russell this way because I'll still have the quotes. All right, so the top of this was 1147 and we got to 1146. So we got into it today. I don't have the volumes here, but they look like they were lighter elsewhere. So it's going to be heavier than the high because there was no volume on that high, if you remember. But it's also on the breakout bar you're comparing to, and I doubt the Russell's going to have the volume compared to the breakout bar. So when I look at the Russell's already came in to do the retest regen, right? Came in right there, hit it, bounced back up, right? Closed over it. That's a successful retest regen on the first attempt. So from that perspective, and this high was 1147. Yeah, I got to it too. So yeah, from this gives you exactly what I suspect we're going to see out of the others. So the Russell has already done it. Now the clues that something bigger on the downside and the rest of those are going to come back is going to be if the Russell comes right back in here tomorrow, right, and gets into the bottom of the retest regen, you know, into this bottom of that high. It almost got there today. That low was 42 and we were at 46. If it gets into the bottom and actually breaks it, right, then we know those others are going to come back. It's going to give us a very high probability. And so the Russell is probably the one to watch. You always want to watch your weakest one on the way back, your strongest one on the way up. And then eventually, if the strongest really do what they're going to do, then you watch your weakest one at the end to see that it gets over it because they'll usually hang long enough to let it. So that's the way I would be looking at these. Let's go look at the sectors and see if they tell us anything. So, let me look one more time here. I want to see what the SPY and the Q's volumes were on the ETFs. Not that much. Expansion, but not that much. But you got to expand over what we had, and not much there. So that looks the same. All right, let's go look at the sectors real quick and see what these guys look like. All right, we'll start with the transports and get a feel here for what's been going on. So these are doing okay. So I suspect what we're going to see on any of these that broke out, they're going to come back and do the same sort of thing, try to do the retest regens. Now, the ETFs of the sectors didn't have nearly the volume you saw on the indexes. So the sectors will be interesting to watch to see if they break under the swing points, the retest regenerate zones off the swing points. And what I'm talking about again, you know the rule here, right? You just come in here, you find that point. That high's low was 29.52. We got to 29.83. Volume is heavier in both cases. So this should try to test that bottom tomorrow, and then we'll see if it's going to hold or not. Along with the Russell, what we want to do is watch these sectors to see how the sectors break down or hold, right? Which will give us the stocks move the sectors, sectors move the indexes. So if the sectors can't hold, enough of them start to break in terms of the retest regen attempts, that gives us a better clue as to what the indexes are going to do. So SMHs, they come right back in, they're doing a retest regen, they don't have the volume. That looks like that one will hold. So +1, -1 if you're counting cards. Okay, XLB's got a long way to get back, but it comes off a little expansion volume. I suspect that one's going to drift in deeper. XLE. Okay, so this one tested the highs, got over them, then fell the next day, then went back over them, and now it fell bigger. And it's doing the retest regen immediately. That low is 87.28, and you close under it. So that's a failure. So IYT will test the bottom tomorrow. The XLB is still in good shape, probably drifts in. XLE has already failed on the retest regen attempt. XLF. Okay, this one's coming in for the test tomorrow. Volume's a little heavier. The breakout bar doesn't have much. That one's going to test tomorrow. XLI. XLI coming back. That one's like the XLB. It's got plenty of room, can just drift in some. XLK. Okay, that one's just like the NASDAQ. It just wants to try to get back to the gap area. XLP. Okay, these guys have been weak for a long time. They're still range trading at the top. XLU has been the weakest. This one's actually in a bearish and got even more today. Now, that one's going to break down. That one's going to test the lows tomorrow and try to break lower, and it looks like it probably will. Which is interesting because the interest rates really didn't go down today, and that's what's been beating this one up pretty bad. XLV, volume expansion, you're coming back into this high. That top is 55. You got 55.13 close, you hit it. You did 8.7 into 10. That looks to hold. XLY will test again tomorrow because they hit it pretty good, but it looks to hold, and this one looks fine. So sector-wise, you got about two or three look like they're gonna fail or have already. You've got 4, maybe 5 of them that are still strong, just gonna drift in some. So sectors also kind of reinforcing the idea that we get a pullback, but that we're probably going to get a bounce out of that pullback on a test. That seems to be conducive with that same thought. Let's go look at the Ox markets and see what we got over there. So I want to go to the dollar first because the dollar was screaming higher along with gold, which was very interesting today. Alright, so the dollar does decent volume into resistance and fails. Okay, so dollar tested this big bar, this wide price spread bar on Fed Day. That high was 21.66 when we closed at 21.65, so that's a failure. So that looks like it wants to try to pull back. Let me go look at the FXE. So the FXE comes under the swing point low, doesn't have the volume, 134.97. We close over it, tested into it, closed over it. That looks to bounce. So so it holds. Now, it didn't hit it with enough volume to make me think it's going to try again. Yeah, that looks to get a bounce. But do remember here, this thing tested the highs, right? Couldn't stay over them. Hit it with volume, right? You hit it with volume and you sold off in the same day. So what does it do? It goes all the way back up and tries it again, right? No volume. That was the Christmas week or New Year's week. couldn't do anything, right? So what happens? You come off, and then you get really slammed today on a big gap down if you're on the wrong side of that one. Test the low, you come too far too fast, you're going to get a bounce. More than likely, that's going to set up finally because you failed up here already, right? This is already telling you it can't break higher yet, if it's going to. So that's going to set up some sort of an ABCD structure, probably into the bottom of this, back down to break that thing out and probably get down here to test this area. So I don't know what that means for gold, because today gold didn't give a flip, and I think part of that was just because gold had been beaten up until the end of the year. But euro wants to go lower. Now, talking about the euro, you had flash PMIs, you had manufacturing numbers today, the ISM numbers. France is in trouble, and I've talked about France before. Let's see what it looks like today. They got slammed, big bar down. Okay, and the thing that was really dumb about all this is that if you look at the ETF, I did a 1-minute trade on this thing. So if you're interested, come over here. I won't go through it all, but if you're interested, come over here and just look at this 1-minute trade. So the 1-minute trade is here. Pop in here on the front page, just video section. Pop in here, check it out. They drove this thing up to new highs on the ETF itself when there wasn't anything here, so they built a premium into the ETF basically, and today they got hammered. And France, I talked about France as an issue. France still is an issue, and on the low volume week, they took it right over all three of these retest regens, right, and couldn't none of them held. So you got over them all, right? You come back, that's going to put it in some sort of a large range. Where would that range be? I think probably the bottom of this to start with, which would set up some sort of a hope for an ABCD structure back to the north, right? So there's a possibility that happens. But I suspect what you're really going to see is you're going to see this thing come up and fail to get back over it, set another ABCD down, and come down here and test these areas again before it's all over with. France is a totally different animal compared to everything else. But you've got strength in Germany that's going to help it hang, which is going to put it in a range for a while. Let's see. I was on the FXE, so that was it. Let's go look at gold. Gold had a big day up, and okay, so it lost steam at the end. You got over the resistance zone, so that test. All right, now this one's interesting. Look at this one. So the retest regen here had already taken place once. Okay, so it's not really a retest regen anymore. The retest regen had already taken place here, and it had succeeded, meaning that it could not get overpriced, so it regenerated lower. So it went up, and it was going to try to break down, set up an ABC structure of downside. Couldn't do it, right? It holds, and instead, what is it doing? It's setting up like a W-type pattern. A lot of people say W means win. But essentially this thing couldn't break down. So now it goes up and it tests the top of that area finally, right, and fails. Well, it's really not failing on the retest regen. It's failing into this big volume bar here, right? It doesn't have the juice. So this is going to set up some sort of range trade more than likely near term, it looks like. Where this thing is probably going to try to get, I would think that it's going to try to get to the swing point high right up in here and probably fail, and then you're going to have a range in this area. That looks to be what it's going to try to do near term. So gold, not bad. Let's see if silver looks the same. And I'm running out of time, and I see a question over here, so and let me make sure I don't have anybody else asking. Yeah, let me pop over. So this silver looks the same. Is there anything else over? Oh, bonds. Let's look at bonds real quick, and then let's go take your questions. Bonds, little bounce. Bonds still trying to fail. Okay, so that swing point low, 102.22, 102.17. So it's back over the weekly. It's still under these. Tomorrow will be interesting because you closed under it last week. If you close under it again this week, if the bonds continue to sell off tomorrow, then or at least close lower, then you're going to get 2 bars underneath, which makes it very hard to get back over. So tomorrow will be key for the bonds. Let's go see what the question is here. BAH. You like the fundamentals and it's trading strong. So let's see what we got here. So BAH, let me type it in real quick and see what it looks like. Okay, so BAH, what is this? This is Booz Allen Hamilton, and this is in the consumer discretionary, looks like. Okay, so I wouldn't do anything with it here. So you like the fundamentals, huh? I could pull them up and look, but I'm assuming you know what they look like. No, this is going to fail here. I wouldn't mess with it yet. Let it come back down. You know, it's if you really like this. I mean, there's other stocks I would be playing with, not this one. But if you really like it, let it come back in and do the retest regen off of this bar. Right, that's the zone. It's a big zone. So when it gets into here, see how it hits it and what it does with it. And if it gets into it deeper, let it come all the way to the bottom, and that would be the place, right? Just beware if you're buying it in here somewhere, you got 3 swing point lows all laying down there together. Don't stay with this if it starts to break. If you do trade it. Okay. So new year. First day of the new year, they sell it off. Well, does it mean something, right? What does it tell you? Well, it doesn't tell you a lot because they just squeezed this thing higher for God knows how long, right? You had a big year up. Now I'm going to put the SPY up. You had a big year up. I'll put it over here too. And it was straight up all year. Okay? Then you squeeze right at the end of the year off the Fed day. So the fact that it's coming back really doesn't mean anything other than it really should, and it's about darn time, right? So I wouldn't read too much into this, but at the same time, it certainly looks to me like you're going to see this thing come back, finally do the retest regen, and that's when we'll find out what it's made of. And I suspect, because this is now 6 bars, remember I count bars, this is now 6 bars on the breakout, on the SPX itself here on the SPY clearly, also on the Qs, also on the IXIC, all of them. What happens when you have 6 bars? Well, the first time back off the 6 bars, that's a winning situation, right? That's about a 92%er that it's going to bounce. Now bounce, you know, I always try to make sure I'm clear here. Bounce doesn't mean this thing's going to go back to high. Bounce means it will hold and try to push up. It may not go very far, right? But that's what it will try to do. And that's where you judge it. That's where you make your decisions, whether you really stick some money in this thing and expect it to go high or not. Folks, I appreciate you being there. You tell a friend, tell two. As always, I'm L.A. Little, and this is and was your daily TA wrap. Good to be back. I'm glad it's a new year. Let's have a great one together. I think there's a lot of potential. There's always a lot of potential. I don't care if the market goes up and down. As long as we're on the right side, we can make money. And we'll be on the right side if we pay attention to the clues. Have a great night. Take care. I'll see you next time.